we're still expecting a snowstorm.
The Senate will come to order. Mr. Carpenter, please call the roll.
Senators Bridges, Cook, Corum, Court, Crowder, Danielson, Donovan,
Excused.
Thunberg, Fields, Foote, Gardner, Heisey, Holbert, Lee, Lundeen, Marble, Moreno, Pedersen, Priola, Rankin, Story,
Absent.
Tate, Todd, Williams, Winter, Woodward, Zinzinger, Mr. President. Story. Mr. President.
Here. With 33 present, 0 absent, and 2 excused, we have a quorum. Senator Woodward, would you please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Thank you, Mr. President. Guests, please stand and join me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag
Of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Approval of the Journal. Senator Winter.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that the reading of the Journal of Friday, April 5th, 2019 be dispensed with and that the Journal be approved as corrected by the Secretary.
You have heard the motion. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. The ayes have it, and the motion is adopted. Senate Services.
Correctly printed. Senate Current Resolution 2 and 3. Correctly engrossed. Number 170-200. Senate General Resolution 8. Correctly re-engrossed. Number 185. Correctly revised. House Bill 1087, 1206, 1207, 1213, 1225, and 1238. Correctly revised. House Bill 1224. Correctly enrolled. Senate Bill 78. Senate Resolution 9.
Message from the House.
The House is passed on third reading and returns herewith. Senate Bill 209, 210, 211, 212. The House is passed on third reading and transmitted by the statute. Senate Bill 207, 208, 213. Minutes printed in the House Journal April 4, 2019. The House has adopted the first report of the First Conference Committee on Senate Bill 106 is printed in the House Journal April 2, 2019. Has repassed the bill so amended. The bill is returned herewith. The House has voted to concur in Senate amendments to House Bill 1129 and has repassed the bill so amended.
Message from the Reviser.
We herewith transmit without comment as minutes in Bill 207, 208, and 213.
Mr. Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the Senate proceed out of order for purposes of a moment of personal privilege from Senator Winter.
You have heard the motion. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, no. The ayes have it, and the Senate will proceed out of order for the good senator from Westminster. Senator Winter.
Thank you, Mr. President. I request a moment of personal privilege.
Granted.
I just want to take a second to recognize some amazing girls we have with us. If they could stand up. These are the Girl Scout Gold awardees in the state of Colorado. The Gold Award is the highest award you can achieve as a Girl Scout. It shows colleges, employers, and your community that you are out there changing the world. There's 42 Gold Award girls in 2018-19 Girl Scout year, and 29 are with us today. All their projects are related to education, women's issues, food security, environmental issues, and the election process. If you have time today, please check in with these amazing young women and ask them what their Gold Award project was. Each Gold Award girl identifies a community need she's passionate about addressing and creates an innovative, sustainable solution. The Gold Award recipients are perfect examples of young women who lead the Girl Scout way. Taking the lead like a Girl Scout means being a go-getter who's bold, honest, and determined to succeed, an innovator who thinks outside the box, a risk-taker who is willing to try new things, and a leader who leads with empathy. The girls in this room will become the problem-solving barrier breakers and change makers our world needs, and hopefully some of them become future senators. Thank you for being with us today.
Mr. Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that the Senate proceed out of order for consideration of resolutions.
You have heard the motion. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, no. The motion is adopted, and the Senate will proceed out of order for considerations of resolutions. Consideration of resolutions. Mr. Carpenter, please read the title to Senate Resolution 007.
Senate Resolution 7 by Senators Fields and Gardner concerning the recognition of the week of April 7th through the 13th, 2019 as National Crime Victims' Rights Week.
Senator Gardner.
Thank you, Mr. President. On behalf of myself and my colleague from Arapahoe County, I am honored and privileged this morning to move Senate Resolution 19007.
Senator Gardner, would you like it to be read at length?
Thank you, and request that it be read at length.
Mr. Carpenter, please read Senate Resolution 007 at length.
Senate Resolution 7 by Senators Fields and Gardner concerning the recognition of the week of April 7th through the 13th, 2019 as National Crime Victims' Rights Week. Whereas, crime and the threat of violence have profound effects on individuals, families, and communities in America. And whereas, more than 18 million Americans are victims of crime each year. And whereas, crime victims have the right to be kept informed of and involved in criminal processes and to be afforded protection and restitution from their offenders. And whereas, America's crime victims' rights advocates have had a powerful impact on educating the nation about the devastating effects of crime and victimization and the need to provide support and services to individuals and communities hurt by crime. And whereas, with the unwavering support of their communities and victim service providers behind them, survivors will be empowered to face their grief, loss, fear, anger, and hope without fear of judgment and will feel understood, heard, and respected. And whereas, the victims' rights movement has made significant progress over the past several decades in providing services to and increasing the rights of crime victims. And this progress will continue so long as dedicated support is provided to crime victims. And whereas, members of the first regular session of the 72nd General Assembly have established the 7th year of the Colorado Victims' Rights Caucus. And whereas, this year marks the 27th anniversary of the enactment of the Victims' Rights Amendment to the Colorado Constitution, which was passed on November 3rd, 1992, with approval of 82% of Colorado voters. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the Senate of the 72nd General Assembly of the State of Colorado that we, the members of the Colorado Senate, recognize the week of April 7th through the 13th, 2019 as National Crime Victims' Rights Week in Colorado. And during this week and throughout the year, we honor crime victims and those who serve them. And that we encourage the citizens of Colorado, as individuals, communities, and part of the nation, to seek justice and compassion for crime victims. Be it further resolved that copies of this resolution be sent to Nancy Lewis, Executive Director of the Colorado Organization for Victim Assistance, and Stan Hilke, Executive Director of the Colorado Department of Public Safety.
Is there further discussion? Senator Fields.
Thank you, Mr. President and colleagues. Please be seated. You heard the resolution. It's been 27 years since the establishment of the Victims' Right Amendment to the Colorado Constitution. 27 years. That is something to be celebrated. I know crime victims who didn't have the opportunity and the privilege that I had to attend the court proceedings. I have a good friend. He is the founder of Voices of Victims. And when his daughter was murdered, he was not allowed to attend the court proceedings. He was not informed. But that's not the case today. Today, I am in honor to have the privilege to stand before all of you here today in between my two colleagues that both represent El Paso County, and they are strong champions for victims' rights. I want to thank you for being the co-founder of the Victims' Right Caucus, because it's at that caucus that we have monthly meetings that we pull together law enforcement, we pull together advocates and lawmakers and organizers and providers and advocates to talk about the lens and the voice of victims. They inform us as relates to how different types of legislation will impact their community. We also get a sense of the needs, how we need to have more access to services. See, when you've been harmed by crime, oftentimes it just disrupts your way of life. Things don't become normal like they have been in the past. And there's no fast forwarding when you've been victimized by a crime. So I tell victims all the time, you can't fast forward grief. You can't bypass pain. It's just something that you have to push through. And I'm so glad that we have advocates across our state to help victims navigate the criminal justice system. I didn't realize how complicated it was until I was introduced to my victim advocate. Many of them are here today. They taught me what to expect. They taught me when to step out of the courtroom because they said something was going to be disturbing. They helped me prepare my victim impact statement. They helped me find my voice as relates to elevating and advancing issues that are related to crime victims. Thank you. I couldn't be here today if it wasn't for an advocate that helped me. I couldn't be here today if it wasn't a service or a program that helped me. It was a victim advocate that told me it was time for me to bury my son. I was so busy trying to find out who did this horrific thing to my son that days had gone by. Really, weeks. And my advocate said to me, "It's time for you to consider burying your son." That was the farthest thing I wanted to do, was think about that. And after that, she encouraged me and taught me all of the fundamental rights that victims have. And I'm able now to share that with others. So I want to thank you all for being here today. We have other folks who are going to speak, but then I will ask for you to be prepared to stand if you're a victim of crime. I want you to stand if you are an advocate for those who are struggling with crime. And I want to also ask you to stand if you are a provider of services for victims. But in closing, I just want you to know that bad things do happen to good people. I'm a witness to that. And it's because of people like you that I was able to punch through holes of my own depression and darkness. And you will too. You're not in this alone. I found out I was not alone. And all you have to do is ask for help. And wherever I went and I knocked on the door of law enforcement, of the Attorney General's office, or whoever it was, they invited me in and they ushered me through this journey, which is a lonely journey. Bad things do happen to good people. But as long as you keep pushing for justice, you will find it on the other side. Thank you so very much for helping us celebrate 27 years of Victims' Rights Amendment to the Colorado Constitution.
Senator Gardner.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, words cannot add in any way to the testimony of my colleague from Arapahoe County. For my own part, I have come to the advocacy for crime victims as a former prosecutor and as a legislator. And I have to say, and I say this to new members often about important issues like the rights of crime victims. They may not be the things that you initially run on, if you will, or that you necessarily promise to do, though it will be for some. But what you find when you come to the General Assembly is opportunities to join with others for things that unite us, the things that unite us as a community, as citizens, as a state. And one of those things for me, and I suggest and hope that it will be for you, is advocating for the rights of crime victims, which I have had the privilege in the House and now in the Senate to do with my friend and colleague from Arapahoe County. I know we will have your support. I urge your support, and I say to the people of Colorado this morning, always think about advocating for the rights of crime victims. It is part of our Constitution. It is part of our criminal justice system, and it is a challenge. It is something that is absolutely necessary, and it is rewarding for those of us who are able to be a small part of helping those who have been victims of crime. Thank you.
Senator Lee.
Thank you, Mr. President. I stand in honor with my colleagues in support of Senate Resolution 7. This is a momentous and monumental resolution recognizing people who are too often neglected or on the outskirts. We think about offenders, we think about people who commit crimes, and how do we address those crimes? What sort of sanctions are appropriate? What sort of rehabilitation is required? When I got to the General Assembly, and a couple of years before I came here, I worked in a process called restorative justice. Restorative justice puts victims at the center of the process dealing with crime. In the restorative justice process, victims are given the voice and the participatory right to meet with the victim, if they choose to do so, face to face in a facilitated conference in order to answer those questions that never, ever otherwise get answered. They can look the offender in the eye, if they choose to do so, and ask that question, why? Why did you hurt me? Why did you steal from me? Why did you hurt my family member? Questions that are not answered in the criminal justice system, but which are gnawing at the heart of every victim. They want to know why. But in addition to answering those questions, they also get to participate in a significant way in setting the consequences of what happens to that offender in that process. And by participating in the process of setting consequences, victims can begin the process of healing. When I first learned about restorative justice, and I've spent almost 20 years working in this area, I was using the phrase to help victims heal. But it was pointed out to me that victims never heal. They begin to heal over time, but the pain and the hurt of crime never goes away. But by participating in a victim-offender dialogue, in discussing and meeting with the offender face-to-face, they can begin to move from that process of anger and vengeance and revenge and, I would say, hatred to one of understanding and maybe possibly equanimity, and in some cases, extraordinarily, to forgiveness. And I have seen this. I have seen a victim, after describing the pain to their offender and enabling that offender to really understand it and develop empathy, face their offender as the offender stood up and walked across the circle and stuck out their hand and said, "I am sorry." And in something I never saw in my courtroom practice, I saw a victim stand up and look the offender in the eye and say, "I forgive you." This powerful process of restorative justice is another way to deal with offenses other than vengeance and retribution and punishment. It's not the exclusive remedy, it's a possible adjunct to make this criminal justice system work better. So today, I stand in honor with my colleagues who have supported victim rights, recognizing that Colorado, unique among states, did not get a Victim Rights Act from legislative enactment, but from the initiative of the people. The people came forward and said, "We want this in Colorado." And now, 27 years later, we continue to advance victim rights in Colorado. And I am proud to stand here in support of this resolution honoring Victim Rights Week and ask you, my colleagues, to support this resolution as well. Thank you.
Is there further discussion? Seeing none, the motion is the passage of Senate Resolution 007 on. Are there any no votes? With a vote of 33 ayes, 0 no, 0 absent, and 2 excused, Senate Resolution 007 is passed. Co-sponsors. Senator Fields.
Thank you, Mr. President. I request that the current roll call be added as co-sponsors.
Seeing no objection, the current roll call will be added as co-sponsors. Senator Fields.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to request a moment of personal privilege.
Granted.
Members, I'd like to introduce to you some phenomenal people that help victims in our community across the state. But before I do so, I would like to have all the victims in the gallery and along the benches to please stand. Thank you for being here today. Will all of the providers of services to victims, whether you're Mothers Against Drunken Drivers or Rocky Mountain Victim Advocates Group, will you please stand? And COVA, please stand. And then also all the advocates that are here today that advocate on behalf of crime victims, will you please stand? Some of you guys have dual roles. Thank you so very much for lending voice to this process. Many of the colleagues that you see that are sitting on their chairs have sponsored bills for you. They have lent voice to some of your concerns. I remember the minority leader here sponsored a bill on behalf of a victim as it related to Move Over Cody. Many of you have sponsored bills to support issues regarding the rights of victims or those who've been harmed by crime. Thank you for sponsoring those pieces of legislation, and thank you for being here. Let's give them a warm welcome.
The Senate will be in a brief recess to welcome our guests. The Senate will come back to order. Consideration of resolutions. Mr. Carpenter, please read the title to Senate Joint Resolution 006.
Senate Joint Resolution 6 by Senator Lundin, Representative Carver, concerning the recognition of the 35th Space Symposium and celebrating the premier international space policy and program forum.
Mr. Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members, Senate Joint Resolution 006 is an outrage. I just cannot get down with this whole space thing. And so therefore, Mr. President, I move to lay over Senate Joint Resolution 006 until May 4th, 2019 to bring some honesty and values to this institution called the Colorado Senate.
Is there discussion? Senator Lundin.
Thank you, Mr. President. I have one question for the Majority Leader. I'm curious if this, in fact, will move this resolution beyond the final frontier. Thank you, Mr. President.
Mr. Minority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. I think that I'm about to go where no minority leader has gone before, but I join the Majority Leader in asking your support for this motion. There's no reason that we need to hear this resolution twice, and thanks for your support the first time we heard it.
Senator Bridges.
Thank you, Mr. President. May the 4th be with you.
Seeing no relevant discussion, the motion before the body is to lay over Senate Joint Resolution 006 until May 4th. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, no. The ayes have it, and Senate Joint Resolution 006 is laid over until May 4th, 2019. Special orders, second reading of bills. Senator Gonzalez.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move. Ya sabe. Señor Presidente, I move that the Senate resolve itself into the Committee of the Whole for the consideration of special orders, second reading of bills.
You have heard the motion. All those in favor say aye. All the opposed, no. The motion is adopted. The Senate will resolve itself into the Committee of the Whole for consideration of special orders, second reading of bills, and Senator Gonzalez will take the chair.
The committee will come to order and the court rule is relaxed. Will the clerk please read the title to House Bill 1208?
House Bill 1208 by Representatives Singer and Landgraf, Representatives Fields and Gardner, concerning the designation of physical therapists as healthcare providers for the purpose of ensuring compliance with required head trauma guidelines and organized youth athletic activities.
We have an amendment.
Senator Gardner.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I move House Bill 1208, and there is no committee report.
To the bill.
Members, this is a bill to add physical therapists to those healthcare providers who can ensure compliance with the required head trauma guidelines and organized youth athletic activities. We have had this law on the statute for several years now. It is an important legislative provision. Physical therapists have not been in the past empowered to do the assessment to return youth in athletic activities back to play, and this would add them. There is an amendment.
There is an amendment on the desk. Will the clerk please read Amendment L005?
Amendment L005, House Bill 1208 by Senator Todd, amendment gross bill page
Senator Todd.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I move Amendment L005 to House Bill 1208. Let me just briefly explain why this came forward. I don't serve on the Health Committee, so I wasn't able to sit in on the hearing, but for just a personal background, back in 2011, when I was in the House, did carry the Jake Snakenberger bill, and that was the concussion bill. This is a young man who at Smoky Hill High School played football, went back out after he had had a concussion too soon, and died. It was a horrific tragedy for us. It brought about an awareness that raised the need for training for concussions to a level that really, I believe, has made a huge impact in Colorado. We as a state and CHASA, our coaches, the training, have all really increased. Because of that, I actually even went through and did the coaches training and got my little certificate to just say that this is important enough. If you're working with sports and you're working with children, that it is very important that they are trained and know and understand. So what this amendment is doing is adding the word pediatric to training. Again, when we look at what our physical therapists, who are so capable of doing a marvelous job in so many different areas, concussions are in a unique situation, and so I was immediately concerned when I first read it, and then came back and worked with the sponsors and worked with physical therapists to make sure that we really would make sure that there's additional training specifically for pediatrics. And with that, I urge an aye vote on L005.
Senator Fields.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Members, I too urge an aye vote on this amendment L005. Currently, 25 other states allow physical therapists to make this determination, and we will be joining that lineup. Vote yes on that amendment L005.
Is there any further discussion on Amendment L005? Seeing none, the motion is the adoption of Amendment L005. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it, and the amendment is adopted. Senator Gardner.
With that, thank you, Madam Chair. With that, we renew our motion for the passage of House Bill 1208 on second reading as amended.
Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, the motion is the adoption of House Bill 1208. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes barely have it. The bill is adopted. Majority Leader Fenberg.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move the committee rise and report.
The motion before the committee is to rise and report. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The committee will rise and report.
The Senate will come back to order. Senator Gonzalez.
Thank you, Mr. President. The committee met and had a bill under consideration. Will the clerk please read the report?
Mr. President, your committee will beg to lead reports on consideration of following task bills being saving there, makes final recommendations are on. House Bill 1208 is amended, passed, read, or revised, place account for third reading and final passage.
Senator Gonzalez.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move for adoption of the report.
The motion is for the adoption of the committee whole report. Are there any no votes? With a vote of 33 ayes, 0 noes, 0 absent, and 2 excused, the committee whole report is adopted. House Bill 19-1208 as amended passed on second reading and ordered revised and placed on the calendar for third reading and final passage. Third reading of bills. Third reading of bills consent calendar. Mr. Carpenter, please read all the titles listed on the third reading consent calendar.
Senate Bill 200 by Senator Gonzalez and Representative Valdez A, concerning exception to the prohibition of removing an alcohol beverage from a premises licensed to serve alcohol beverages at the National Western Center. House Bill 1087 by Representative Soper and Hanson and Senators Woodward and Bridges, concerning one line. House Bill 1238 by Representatives Graham Van Winkle and Senators Winter and Priola, concerning the authority built structures. Senate Bill 170 by Senators Rodriguez and Tate and Representative Harrod, concerning an inquiry into a college applicant's non-academic conduct prior to admission. House Bill 1206 by Representative Coleman and Larson and Senators Bridges and Lundin, concerning removing equity gaps in higher education by ensuring more students have access to supplemental academic instruction. House Bill 1225 by Representatives Harrod and Soper and Senators Lundin and Lee, concerning prohibiting the use of monetary bill for certain levels of offenses except in certain circumstances.
Mr. Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the passage of all the bills on the third reading of bills consent calendar, which includes Senate Bill 200, House Bill 1087, House Bill 1238, Senate Bill 170, House Bill 1206, and House Bill 1225.
Is there any discussion on any of the bills? Seeing none, the motion before the body is the passage of all the bills on the third reading consent calendar. Are there any no votes on any of the bills on the third reading consent calendar? With a vote of 33 ayes, 0 noes, 0 absent, and 2 excused, Senate Bill 200 is passed. Co-sponsors: Senators Sonnenberg, Crowder, Cook, Janal, Moreno, Priola, Heisey, Quorum, Woodward, Scott. Court. Williams, Rodriguez, Bridges. With a vote of 33 ayes, 0 noes, 0 absent, and 2 excused, House Bill 1087 is passed. Co-sponsors: Senators Moreno, Heisey, Gonzalez, Todd, with a vote of 33 ayes, 0 noes, 0 absent, and 2 excused, House Bill 1238 is passed. Co-sponsors: Mr. Minority Leader. With a vote of 33 ayes, 0 noes, 0 absent, 2 excused, Senate Bill 170 is passed. Co-sponsors: Senators Winter, Gonzalez, Moreno, Court, Story, Bridges. Williams. Please add the President. With a vote of 33 ayes, 0 noes, 0 absent, and 2 excused, House Bill 1206 is passed. Co-sponsors: Senators Crowder, Moreno, Winter, Heisey, Todd, Woodward, Story, Gardner, Court, Gonzalez, Rodriguez. Please add the President. With a vote of 33 ayes, 0 noes, 0 absent, and 2 excused, House Bill 1225 is passed. Co-sponsors: Senators Moreno, Gonzalez, the Majority Leader, Rodriguez, Bridges, Crowder, Woodward, Pedersen, Story, Winter, Gardner, Court. Please add the President. Third reading of bills, final passage. Mr. Carpenter, please read the title to House Bill 1213.
House Bill 1213 by Representative Tone and Senator Priola, concerning the compensation payable to a member of Board of Directors of an Urban Drainage and Flood Control District.
Senator Priola.
Thanks, Mr. President. I move House Bill 1213 on third reading and final passage.
Is there further discussion? Senator Crowder.
Thank you, Mr. President. Real briefly, this bill was based on corruption Friday, and it's Monday, and it's still a bill based on corruption, so I'll be a no vote on it. Thank you.
Seeing no further discussion, the question before the body is the passage of House Bill 1213 on third reading and final passage. Are there any no votes? Senators Sonnenberg, the Minority Leader, Crowder, Heisey, Marble, Scott, Danielson, Pedersen, Smallwood, Gardner, Woodward. With a vote of 22 ayes, 11 no votes, 0 absent, and 2 excused, House Bill 1213 is passed. Co-sponsors. Mr. Carpenter, please read the title to House Bill 1207.
House Bill 1207 by Representative Roberts and Senators Donovan and Rankin concerning a requirement that motor vehicles meet the traction control standards for winter conditions.
Senator Rankin.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move House Bill 1207 on third reading and final passage.
Is there any discussion? Seeing none, the motion before the body is the passage of House Bill 1207 on third reading and final passage. Are there any no votes? Senators Smallwood, Sonnenberg, Heisey, the Minority Leader, Marble, Zenzinger. With a vote of 27 ayes, 6 noes, 0 absent, and 2 excused, House Bill 1207 is passed. Co-sponsors. Senators Moreno, Todd, Court. General order, second reading of bills. Senator Gonzalez.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the Senate resolve itself into the Committee of the Whole for consideration of general order, second reading of bills.
You have heard the motion. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, no. The motion is adopted, and the Senate will resolve itself into the Committee of the Whole for consideration of general order, second reading of bills, and Senator Gonzalez will take the chair.
This time I'm ready. The committee will come to order and the court rule is relaxed. Will the clerk please read the title to House Bill 1030?
House Bill 1030 by Representatives Soper and Roberts and Senators Rankin and Zenzinger concerning creating the crime of unlawful electronic sexual communication.
Senator Rankin.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move House Bill 1030 and the Judicial Committee report.
To the committee report, Senator Rankin.
The committee removed the appropriation clause since it was determined one was not required.
Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, the motion is the adoption of the Judiciary Committee report. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The committee report is adopted. To the bill, Senator Rankin.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So, members, at its heart, this bill, after all the wrangling over the statutory language, and perhaps properly so, is about protecting kids, in this case, teenagers, from sexual predators. It stems from a very clear case, which I'll describe, but it's about keeping our law current with technology. As technology has changed and we see all sorts of people using it for all sorts of purposes, it's sometimes necessary to bring our law up to those challenges. But it's also about finding and correcting a loophole in our current law, which we will describe for you. It stems from a case that happened actually in my district, both my old House district and my new Senate district, of course. So it came to my attention actually before this session, and I was instrumental in introducing the law in the House, but then as I left, had to turn it over to our two fine young lawyers, bipartisan, who carried the bill through. It had a difficult time getting the language right, 3 rewrites, and then it actually had a good 58-7 vote. So it was very well vetted in the House. But let me tell you a little bit about what happened. So up in Craig, there was a case. It was a 34-year-old, as it turns out, person of interest, and a 15-year-old girl. And over a period of time, there were explicit sexual exploitation by every definition. There were actually texts that definitely exhibited that kind of behavior. Unfortunately, the photographs that went along with it were on Snapchat. In Snapchat, those pictures go away after a while and are not retrievable. So the case went to court, and the defendant was actually acquitted because of 2 glaring loopholes. One is photographs were required, the text was acceptable. If the student, in this case, was 15 years old, so they were not covered between 15 years and 18 years. So this led to a need to fix it. There have been other instances, other cases like this. Who knows how many, but if there's 2, there are going to be a lot more in the future because this sort of thing escapes current prosecution. So that's how the case came about, and the citizens of Moffat County actually brought this to us saying, you must fix this loophole. So that's where we started with the case.
Senator Zenzinger.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So to be clear, I want to focus on the actual policy. If you have the bill in front of you, I want to start on page 2, section 1. What's really important to know is that we are creating a new crime here. And the reason why we are creating a new crime in our statutes is because currently one does not exist. So we have decided that it is unlawful for electronic sexual communication if the actor knowingly importunes, invites, or entices through communication either via a computer network system, telephone network, or data network, or text message, or instant message, a person whom the actor knows to be under 15 years old and send that individual sexual explicit communication. We've already decided as a body that that is unacceptable and it is against the law. The problem that we are trying to correct today, and the reason why we are adding to our statutes a new crime, is that that only applies to under 15 years old. And we believe that a person in a position of trust should not be allowed to do this to 15, 16, and 17-year-olds either. So in the first section of the bill, what you will see there is existing language that is already in our statutes. It's already in the Internet Exploitation of a Child section of our statutes, 18-3-405.4. The only difference between that section and this section is we changed the age to include 15 years of age or older, but less than 18 years of age. Secondly, we put some guardrails around this language. So we didn't want to get into the business of criminalizing, making it a felony criminal offense for a 19-year-old to be text messaging his 17-year-old girlfriend, because that's not what this is about. What this is about is a person of trust, a coach, a teacher, a priest, a boss, a doctor, someone who is entrusted with the care of that student, similar to a parent, who is engaging in this type of criminal behavior. And so if you look at that section, the entire section, lines 1 through 20, are already in existing law, and the only difference is changing the age to say 15 to 18, and putting some guardrails on it by establishing that it must be a person of trust. Because we're not trying to criminalize boyfriend and girlfriend behavior. Secondly, the next section of this bill, starting on number 2, is the existing language in statutes regarding internet luring of a child. So again, all of the text that is in that section is already in law. We've already decided that it is unlawful if the actor knowingly communicates over a computer, Snapchat, text messaging, whatever it may be, if that person is under 15. So what this bill does is it says it's also unacceptable if you are 15, 16, or 17 years old as well. So we had a couple of people ask us, well, why didn't you just change the number? Why didn't you just change the age in the existing statute? Why did you have to create a whole new section? And again, going back to my comment earlier, because we don't want to get into the business of criminalizing 19-year-old and 17-year-old relationships. This is very specific about a person who is in a position of trust, violating that trust. And in the case that was mentioned up in Craig, the crime that this individual was charged with was pornography. And pornography didn't fit. It didn't fit the crime. And the reason it didn't fit the crime is the crime that took place doesn't currently exist in our statutes. So they had to make do with whatever they could, and the closest crime that they could affix to this person was pornography. And unfortunately, because those images disappeared over Snapchat, they didn't have the evidence to be able to make the case. Now, the 33 sexually explicit text messages where the actor enticed, invited, all sorts of really ludicrous sexual behavior, asking for video, sending pictures, inviting pictures, asking to meet, all of that was exhibited in those 33 text messages, but the victim was 15. So they were not admissible. Now, could this law possibly have changed the outcome of that case? It remains to be seen. But it is our contention that it's really important that we close up, tighten up our laws, and make sure that this doesn't happen again. And so therefore, we ask for your consideration and for an aye vote on House Bill 1030.
Further discussion? Senator Rankin.
Well, just a couple of other comments. There was a good bit of discussion of whether or not medical professionals and medical advice would be exempted. They are, and that's been taken care of in the rewrites and also in other law. In addition, there was some concern about telecom, whether the telecom provider would be liable in this. They're not. That's covered in other law. And it's also true that we did not change the definition of explicit sexual conduct. We refer to that. There was a good bit of discussion about the broadness of existing law. But that's not what we're doing here. We're just referring to explicit sexual conduct and also position of trust. Those are both references and not new definitions. So I think it's important to point that out.
Senator Zenzinger.
To my colleague's point, if you look on page 3, beginning on section 3, there's a list of definitions. There is no new language in any of those definitions. Those are all existing language. If you turn to section 2, beginning at the bottom of page 3, all the way through page 4 and through page 5, those are merely conforming amendments. There's no substantive change. And if you go to page 6, section 5 was actually struck from the bill because the House work that they did on this by creating such a narrow scope in order to avoid other complications, then made it so that there wasn't even an appropriations clause. So again, what's different? Even though it appears that all of this in capital letters, it looks as if it's all new, it's not. The difference is the age, so that this crime applies to 15, 16, and 17-year-olds, and that it is taking place by a person in a position of trust. And we ask for an aye vote.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, the motion before the body is the adoption of House Bill 1030. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The bill is adopted. Will the clerk please read the title to Senate Bill 187?
Senate Bill 187 by Senators Lee and Gardner concerning commissions on judicial performance.
Senator Gardner.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move Senate Bill 187 and the Judiciary Committee report.
To the committee report, Senator Gardner.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Members, the Judiciary Committee added a safety clause to this bill. You may quickly ask, why are you putting a safety clause on this bill, Senator from El Paso County? And the answer is, this bill is a bill to make some refinements in our Judicial Performance Commission and a bill we did a couple of years ago. One of the difficulties we are having is that we currently have 16 vacancies on judicial performance commissions around the state. That is because our bill left the filling of the vacancies to the executive branch, and frankly, they have dozens, maybe hundreds of appointments to do, and these just sort of fall in with all of them. What the bill does, and why the safety clause will matter, is the bill allows the Performance Commission itself to fill the vacancies. The importance of having it become immediately effective, and it does affect public safety piece with respect to the Judicial Department, is that those 16 positions can be filled quickly for the next cycle of Judicial Performance Commission. So I ask for an aye vote on the Judiciary Committee report.
Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, the motion is the adoption of the Judiciary Committee report. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The report is adopted. There's an amendment on the desk. Will the clerk please read the amendment L002?
Amendment L002, Senate Bill 187 by
Senator Gardner.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move L002.
Thank you. Is there any discussion?
Thank you. Madam Chair, members, the bill is a refinement to the Judicial Performance Commission, I would say revisions and improvements of 2 years ago. And as we've gone through using that process, the executive director and the commissions themselves have said certain things are not working as well as they might. One of them is that there are a lot of paper and pen kinds of surveys that are mailed. The return rate on those is about 3%. Now, the idea in the bill as it was drafted was to take out some of the requirements for sending pen and paper surveys, but when that was done, the language looked as if we were not going to be polling law enforcement, pro se litigants, and crime victims, which was never the intent and was not the practical effect of the language in the bill, but it raised concerns by those who read the bill and saw the strike. So to remedy that, we ask the proponents to take a look at that language. They have restored the original language in L002, and now it simply says, the surveys developed pursuant to the subsection are distributed primarily through electronic means, and the State Commission shall make efforts to locate electronic mail addresses for parties identified in the subsection. So it doesn't preclude pen and paper, but what we know is that for electronic surveys, the return rate is much, much higher. Even for pro se litigants, crime victims and others. We live in the 21st century. So that's what L002 does. It improves the language. We thank the folks who came and testified, frankly, who said, well, this looks like you're not going to survey some important people, which was never the intent. So we think this clears it up, and we ask for an aye vote.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, the motion is the adoption of Amendment L002. All those in favor say aye.
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 Those opposed, no. The ayes have it, and the amendment is adopted. To the bill, Senator Gardner.
Thank you. I think we've explained the bill as discussing the amendment and what was involved. We renew our motion for the passage of Senate Bill 187 as amended on second reading.
Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, the motion is the adoption of Senate Bill 187. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. The ayes have it, and the bill is adopted. Majority Leader Fenberg.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Move the committee rise and report.
The motion before the committee is to rise and report. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. No. The ayes clearly have it. The committee will rise and report.
The Senate will come back to order. Senator Gonzalez.
Thank you, Mr. President. The committee has met and had a number of bills under consideration. Will the clerk please read the report?
Mr. President, your committee will beg the leader presenting serious mock test bills being second reading. There will make 27 is a minute passing order. Gross place counter for the reading and final passage. House Bill 1030 is a minute passing order. Rise place counter for the reading and final passage.
Senator Gonzalez.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move for adoption of the report.
The motion is for the adoption of the committee of the whole report. Are there any no votes? With a vote of 33 ayes, 0 noes, 0 absent, 2 excused, the committee of the whole report is adopted. Senate Bill 19187 as amended, passed on second reading, order engrossed and placed on the calendar for third reading and final passage. House Bill 1030 as amended, passed on second reading, and order revised and placed on the calendar for third reading and final passage. Consideration of House amendments to Senate bills. Will the clerk please read the title to Senate Bill 091?
Senate Bill 91 by Senators Fields and Cook and Representative Singer concerning the support of a peace officer involved in a use of force incident.
Senator Fields.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that the Senate concur with House amendment to Senate Bill 91.
Senator Fields, can you please tell the Senate why we should concur with House amendments to Senate Bill 91?
Gladly, Mr. President. On page 2 of the bill, they added the word "and" to follow reintegration strategies for police officers involved in critical incidents. I urge and I vote.
Is there further discussion? Seeing none, the motion before the body is that the Senate concur with House amendments to Senate Bill 91. Are there any no votes? With a vote of 33 ayes, 0 noes, 0 absent, 2 excused, that motion is adopted. Senator Fields.
Mr. President, I move for the readoption of Senate Bill 91.
The motion before us is the repassage of Senate Bill 091. Are there any no votes? With a vote of 33 ayes, 0 noes, 0 absent, 2 excused, Senate Bill 091 is repassed. Co-sponsors. Senators Moreno, Gardner, Conference committees to report.
First report on First Conference Committee on Senate Bill 106. This report amends the revised bill to the President of the Senate and Speaker of the House of Representatives. Your First Conference Committee appointed on Senate Bill 106 concerning an additional process by which a board of county commissioners may initiate the withdrawal of current employees who are peace officers from a defined contribution retirement plan offered by one or more local governments has met and reports that it is agreed upon the following. One, that the Senate accede the House amendments made to the bill as the amendments appear to the revised bill with the following changes. Two, that under the authority granted the committee to consider matters not an issue between the houses, the following amendments be recommended. Respectfully submitted, Senate Committee Senators Zenzinger, Chair, Cook, and Court. House Committee Representatives Tipper, Chair, Hooten, and Larson.
Signing of bills.
The President has signed House Bill 1029, 1038, 1069, 1086, 1150, and 1166.
Message from the House.
The House has passed on third reading and changed by the Revised Statutes. House Bill 1256, 1286. The House has passed on third reading and changed by the Revised Statutes. House Bill 1168, 1246, 1254, 1274. Minutes printed in the House Journal, April 5, 2019. The House has passed on third reading and returns herewith. Senate Bill 52, 183. The House has passed on third reading and changed by the Revised Statutes. Senate Bill 214. Minutes printed in the House Journal, April 5, 2019. The House has voted to concur in Senate amendments to House Bill 1224 and has repassed the bill as so amended.
Message from the Reviser.
We herewith transmit without comment House Bill 1256 and 1286 without comment as amended. House Bill 1168, 1246, 1254, and 1274 without comment as amended. Senate Bill 214.
Members, will the Senate choir please convene, and will the sergeants please escort the President Pro Tem to the well, as today is her birthday, so that we can wish her a happy birthday.
We'll sing loudly, Lois.
Huh?
She can complain when we're lighting candles.
I know.
And only.
Really? Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, Senator Cole. Happy birthday to you.
Announcements. Sharon Gonzalez.
Thank you, Mr. President. I request a moment of personal privilege.
Granted.
Thank you, Mr. President. 18 years ago, I received a really exciting letter in the mail. And that letter was my acceptance letter to Yale University. And that changed my life. This year, during my campaign, you know, I often spoke about the importance of lifting as we rise. And so this year, it is my honor to admit one of the fewer than 2,000 admitted students to Yale University out of over 30,000 applicants. This young woman has broken so many barriers, and so it is my honor to introduce you colleagues to Ms. Jocelyn Arguelles. And I have a tribute to read to acknowledge all of her incredible work, the work of her mother, the work of her entire family. This is one of the amazing constituents of Senate District 34. And with that, I'd like to read this tribute. The Colorado Senate convened in the first regular session of the 72nd General Assembly hereby extends heartiest congratulations and commendation to Jocelyn Arguelles. The members of the Colorado Senate are proud to extend our deepest congratulations to Jocelyn Arguelles on her acceptance to Yale University. Jocelyn is honored today not only for her acceptance to one of the top universities in the world, but also for the exceptional character she has displayed as a student, dreamer, young activist, and leader. She has demonstrated a deep humility for her family's sacrifices for the sake of her well-being and an unapologetic attentiveness to justice. We extend our profound gratitude to Jocelyn for her participation in the Student Voice and Leadership Program, We honor her for her academic excellence, and we celebrate her strong moral integrity and selfless advocacy for her fellow immigrant community members, which resulted in her being awarded the 2019 Princeton Prize for Race Relations. Jocelyn's power and strength stand as a testament to perseverance in the face of systemic inequity. Her fortitude and courage are an inspiration, and we, as members of the Colorado Senate, heartily and humbly commend Jocelyn Arguelles for her commitment to her community and family in the present, and for her dedication to the potential and promise of her future. On request of Senator Julie Gonzalez, given this 8th day of April 2019, the state capitol of Denver, Colorado, signed President Leroy M. Garcia, President of the Senate. Members, please join me in congratulating Ms. Arguelles and her mother. Thank you.
Senator Rodriguez.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to take a moment of personal privilege.
Granted.
Colleagues, I just wanted to make an announcement that somebody that served in the chamber for approximately 15 years passed away yesterday. Senator Don Sandoval, who I grew up with as a child, served in this legislature in the 80s for 15 years. I'll probably be setting up a memorial, but I just wanted to let anybody know who served with him, who represented Senate District 31. I just wanted to let you guys know, if anybody knew him, to put out their prayers for the family, and there will be more coming, so thank you.
Senator Crowder.
Request a moment of personal privilege, Mr. President.
Granted.
Thank you. Members, today it was kind of a special day out at the VA. The spinal cord injury unit was the last major obstacle to be opened up at the VA hospital. And of the 400,000 veterans we serve in the state of Colorado, there's a number of them that do have spinal cord injuries. So I thought it was worth noting to you about that. And the other thing I'd like to talk to you about basically is last night we had the UVC awards banquet, which I'm sure some of you in the past have attended, but it was worth noting that it was a very fruitful year for the veterans as far as this body, and I thought it would be very appropriate to let you know who the distinguished state legislatures were this year. You know, these people have done a tremendous job for the veterans in the state, and they continue to look out for the veterans' families. So I think that they should be acknowledged. So if you get a minute, congratulate them on their service. But Senator Pete Lee on the Democratic Senator of the Year. Congratulations, Mr. Lee. And Senator Owen Hill, Republican Senator of the Year. But be sure and take a moment to congratulate them for their work for the veterans of this country, which remain a very, admirable entity in which to support. Thank you, Mr. President.
Senator Zenzinger.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members, we have a Senate Appropriations Committee meeting tomorrow morning. It will be at 7:30 instead of 8. That's because we have a number of bills. We'll be hearing House Bill 1010, House Bill 1023, House Bill 1025, House Bill 1128, House Bill 1214, Senate Bill 54, Senate Bill 66, Senate Bill 67, Senate Bill 145, Senate Bill 146, Senate Bill 155, Senate Bill 159, Senate Bill 160, Senate Bill 163, and Senate Bill 179. So please feel free to join us, 7:30 LSBB. Thank you.
Senator Scott.
Thank you, Mr. President. Toyota Corporation is here today, and they asked me to pass along to you that they're going to have a fuel cell vehicle out on the west steps from noon to 5 p.m. today. If you get a chance to go out and take a look at it, it's quite something to see. I think you'll enjoy it, and it's much better technology than EVs. And as we move forward, we probably should have a bill to do something about this, but I'll have to leave that up to my colleagues to the left.
Was there further discussion? Further announcements? Mr. Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the Senate recess until 2 p.m. today.
You have heard the motion. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, no. The ayes have it, and the Senate will stand in recess until 1400 today.